these are the points that we noted. That static is meant for having a common copy for all the object instances that is created, and its lifetime is throughout the entire code. And because it is as it belongs to the class scope, you cannot invoke a static member or access a static member using objects scope. So uh, this is not possible, and we have to use the class scope to access or see. And in case of static member functions, also the same thing. You cannot use the class scope, object scope. You have to use the class scope, class name, scope resolution, and the name. And uh, because you cannot invoke it through an object, unlike the normal member methods, there is no this pointer associated with the static member method, static member. Okay, and a constructor or destructor cannot be tagged as static because they always are meant for constructing specific objects or destroying specific objects. So these are a few of the things. And when you evaluate the size of an object, even if you have got the static members as a part of the class definition, but you don't include them in calculating the object's space requirement because you are not having exclusive space for that particular member data. Okay, so in this class we'll be talking about uh, constant members. So constant members, it can be constant member data, constant member method. So let us assume that this is a class definition. Everything is public, and we have got int of x, which is a normal data, but we have a constant int a, which is a constant data member, and we have got a constructor where we would like to assign the value of x. This one, we have got a destructor, and we have got a display function. Okay, we have got a function fn, which is added to x, and we have got a display function. Which basically displays the value of x and a. And that's the end of the class definition. Okay, so here within main, I'm creating some value, say x1, okay. So the first question is there is a constant member. So we have already talked about this. So so constants need to be initialized. So how to initialize this member x? So this is a constant member data, this one. Okay, so we are talking about this one first. What is the issue associated with any constants? Constants need to be initialized whenever we have declared it. So where to initialize it?
in the initializer list of the constructor.
But what we found, if we initialize it here also, it worked. The syntax worked. Okay, so as per the good practice, I would like to initialize it in the constructor initializer list. Can you all recall the constructor initializer list?
Yes, sir.
So just after the constructor, where you define the constructor, after this you mention the constructor initializer list. So what you do, a, you assign some value, say maybe 5. Okay, so that is how it is initialized. So this part is trivial. So now in this case, fn is a function which wants to update the state of this variable. It wants to update the state of this variable x, which is a public non-static normal variable. So this is fine. This is updation. Now this display function, any kind of display function, is it supposed to update any of the data members? Generally, do we need to do we ever attempt to update anything when we are trying to display, if it is a pure display function?
No, sir.
So display functions, if it is truly a display function for displaying in a typical format or whatever, so our intention is just to access maybe the values of this or this or whatever the data members are, and just to display it in a suitable format. So there is no updation required at all. So there may be so, but if I write here within this display function, if I write here x plus plus, will it work at this moment?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So I would, why it works? Because this gets converted to, this gets translated to what, this gets translated, because when you actually write this display, so this gets so this gets translated to a this, this pointer is there. Okay, so what will be the type of the this pointer? It points to x, object of x. So that is how it gets translated. And because of that, when you write x plus plus, it is basically translating it to this x plus plus. Is that fine?
Yes, sir.
So this part is fine, right? Hello?
Yes, sir.
So uh, mm, I would like to make some provisions so that these are not allowed. I mean, this kind of updation of any of, because that is what the display means. The display function should not attempt to do that. And if it, even if it does, there will be an error message. So can I uh, make some changes to the display function? Can I tag it in some way so that such attempts should be strictly, warned, and it should be stopped? Got my question?
Yes, sir.
So what provision if I make these such attempts should be stopped? How to stop such update attempts? Is that part clear? The question?
Yes, sir.
Normally it will not be stopped, but I would like to make some provision. So can you tell me what to do?
Using a const keyword after the
So the
parenthesis.
idea is, so we have to go for uh, maybe defining or specifying that this display function is a constant function, is a constant method. So how to ensure constantness? We have to use the constant keyword. We have to write it somewhere. So where should I write it?
After parenthesis.
Yes. So is there any better place to write it? So I have to write the const keyword. So const keyword need to be written. So here when we declare a data member, we can write, we know that this is where we write. But here what should I write? If I write a const keyword here, what does it mean?
The return type is
return
constant.
type.
So return type is constant. If I put a constant keyword here, then also it will be treating as a return type constant, right? And you definitely cannot write something in between, because that does not make sense. You cannot write here, because this is what, these are the input arguments, and there is always a constructor initialized list if there is any. Okay, so the only place that is left probably syntactically, that is that you are having some options to write the const keyword is probably here, right? So we can tag it as const. So is that part fine? So there are no other options left, only apart from writing the const keyword there. So once I write it, what kind of modifications takes place here? So once I write it, I would expect that, so will there be this pointer? This pointer will be there because it is still a non-static function or a method. So this pointer will be there, but the behavior of this pointer, or the this declaration of this pointer, which the compiler will make, that will be changed. So how this will be interpreted, so that such attempts will not be allowed? So earlier we wrote x this, but now what should be the nature of this here?
Const x asterisk this.
So is that part clear? So this is the argument that will be inserted silently by the compiler. And in a normal member method or a non-constant member method, so it is class name asterisk this, so it can modify. But in this case, I would tag it as const. That means through this this, this pointer, the state of the object, so whatever it is pointing to, that object, any of the members of that object cannot be modified. So once you do this, so immediately there will be a warning message here, and this will not be allowed. Is that part fine?
Yes, sir.
So if I write x1 dot, say x1 dot fn, it works. If I write x1 dot say x plus plus, this also works. If I write x1 dot a plus plus, this will not work, because you are attempting to update a constant public method, constant public data. So this is not allowed. Similarly, if I try to write x1 dot, this is a normal method, x1 dot display, this works. It not only works, but this also stops any attempt to modify the member data during its execution. So is that part fine? So the only thing that we should recall is that if I think that a particular method should not attempt, or there is no point of having that method to be as a non-constant one, so I would always prefer to tag it as constant, so to stop any kind of uh, uh, changes or updates in the state of the object, uh, even by mistake. So now finally I would come to the uh, one final example. So if I write something like this, then what happens? Say const x, say a, or say const x a p. What does it mean? How do you read this declaration?
It is a constant object.
So P is a object. First of all, P is a object of class X type, right? But when I tag it as constant, like this A is an integer constant. So P is a, how do I read it? P is a
X constant.
P is a constant object of X. Now what do you think? I mean, if I would like to tag, so that is possible. Like as we can declare constant integer objects, float objects, we can also define, I mean declare constant user defined objects like this X of type X. So this is possible. Now if I would like to tag this X to be this P, the object P to be constant, what is the implication of that? What might be the objective of mine?
We don't want its data members to be modified.
So the thing is, once created, so a constantness of an object means once created, you are not attempting any change. So the state of the object, so the initial state should not change at any point of time. Does it make sense? Does it make sense?
Yes, sir.
So it is something like, if I give you a cot, so again I take the example of the hostel. So if I give you a cot or a table or a chair for your use, say for example, so cot class I have created, chair class I have created. Now I am trying to assign two chair objects, one cot object, but as a hostel boarder, I make sure that these objects you cannot change. So you are not supposed to paint it in as you wish, or you are not supposed to, add something additional to that. So no changes can be made because it is a property of the institute, and those objects you can use, but you cannot change it. So whatever initial value I give, so maybe I paint it all in say brown, and then let them be brown. So like that. So you can use them, but you cannot attempt to make any changes in the state, maybe the color or the size, or maybe you cannot add some additional features to it. That is not possible. So that makes sense, because in real life we indeed uh, face such kind of situations. Okay, so in that case you have to model that particular object as constant. So when you are trying to compose a new class using some existing class objects, you may have to uh, write it in such a way that you can use it, it will be composed of, but you are not supposed to modify it. Okay, so it is something like when you are to procure something, if it is within the warranty, you are not supposed to modify it, tamper it like that, otherwise the warranty will be void. So it's something like that. So these constant objects, so then what's the use of it? So if you cannot make any updates, so can a constant object invoke any method? Can a constant object invoke any method?
Yes, sir.
Like this P, can it invoke fn? Can I write p dot fn?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, I have to pass something here. Okay, so p dot fn means what? If I allow this, that means with this P, so whose value? So this P is invoking fn. So through its uh, address, which is pointed by P, you can attempt to change the value of x, which is a part of the object P. So that is not allowed. So this will be not be allowed. So this is not allowed. But if I write p dot display, will that be allowed?
Yes, sir.
This is allowed, because you know that a constant function never attempts to update the state of the object, and this object by its nature it is constant, so it is not supposed to change its state. So what you can conclude, that constant objects can only invoke constant functions if in, otherwise it will give an error message. Okay, but a, but a non-constant object, a normal object, can always invoke a constant object, because if you invoke it, if you don't modify it, there is no harm. But if it is a constant object, definitely the reverse is not true. So a constant object cannot invoke non-constant methods. So static methods cannot be invoked by individual objects, it is in the class scope. Constant methods can be invoked both by non-constant and constant objects. but non-constant, non-static methods like the general ones that we have discussed till now, they can be invoked by normal non-constant objects. So these are all again too many terminologies, but I think you have got the essence of what I mean. Is there any query till this point? So these are again the summary of the points. I have not been able to prepare it in the slide form, but I have just copied it. I think you can follow. So here is how I deal with the constant objects, constant members, data members. So this part is already known to you. So this part is known to you, and this is about constant member functions. So where we actually write the const keyword here, and once I write it, so this will modify this pointer, decorate it like this. And in case of modifications, the data member values, the compiler will simply give a warning message. So this is what we can just check it instantly. Okay, and this is about constant objects. So a constant object, x is a constant object. So this can invoke only constant member functions, so that its state cannot be changed. And in case it invokes a non-constant member method, it will issue a warning message. Okay. So now we'll take one example where we try to include all these concepts that we have learned in a useful way, in a meaningful way. So let us talk about writing the salary class. So salary processing. So if you are trying to implement a payroll kind of database or whatever, salary is a very important object of that, right? So salary class should be there. So because every employee will have some salary, that may be a fixed salary, that may be a variable salary, that may be a that may have some hikes at some point of time. So like that. So in the employee database, in the employee object, the employee object should be composed of some salary object. Okay, so we are trying to trying to see that how the salary class should be defined, so that a salary object can be inserted like that. So generally, when we talk about salary, we talk about the gross salary. Okay, so the gross salary of a person, I mean, I'm talking about uh, say government organizations. I don't know much about the private sectors, how they pay and all this. So there are other hidden incentives and all, but in a typical government organization, the salary, do you know what are the components of a salary? Any idea? There's a basic. Basic means it depends on your designation. It depends on your designation or pay band, whatever. So there are different pay bands created in the 7th pay commission. So pay band say 12, 13, 14, 14A, 13A like that. And director may be having a pay band of even higher like this. Okay. So in a pay band, you have got say 1,50,000 to say 2 lakhs. So maybe 1,50,000 to 2 lakhs is a pay band, basic pay band corresponding to a particular say um, designation. Say maybe professor is like this. But apart from that, there is another component which many times, maybe at least twice or thrice in a year, that comes into news. Do you know what is that? Part of the component for the government employees. What about this? Hello.
Yes, sir.
What about
Yes,
DA?
sir.
So there is always people shouting and fighting about whether there's a DA hike or not. So generally in a typical central government setup, twice in a year the DA is hiked, and it is more or less proportional to, or it is somehow related to, correlated to the inflation. So inflation, if it changes, so automatically the government employees are given the incentive so that they can meet up their expenditure, daily expenditure, monthly expenditure. So generally, uh, if the monetary value goes down, so you will be given some percentage hike of your DA. So DA will be so if the basic is 10,000, if the DA is say presently the present DA is 28% for the central government employees. Different state governments, because of their budgetary shortfalls and all, so they try to meet that, but sometimes they lack. So, and there is a in the news currently you will find that there is a 3% hike that has already been proposed, and probably by this March it will be there. So the thing is, if your basic and the thing is the basic pay once in a year. So if you keep on continuing the service, so once in a year there is a certain increment of your basic, like, so it will be like 3,000 plus every year it will be done. So if you continue, so basic will increase once in a year, and DA depending on maybe twice or once when the government hikes, it will be considered. So this DA will be some 20% or 30% of the basic. And there is another part which is bonus. Generally the bonus is not applicable for maybe the managerial posts or the officer grade positions, but for the normal, for all other positions this bonus is also there, and sometimes it is a festival bonus, sometimes it can be production incentives for manufacturing companies and all, like this. So if I consider this to be this layout, so how a gross can be calculated as, how a gross salary can be calculated quickly? It should be basic plus basic times
Net.
DA by 100, okay, plus bonus. Is that fine? Is that part okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
But one point to note is, everybody agrees? So one point to note is this DA is same for all designations. So even the director, whatever the DA he is enjoying and whatever the DA hike he is enjoying, normal faculty also will do that, and the normal clerical post say staffs also will enjoy that. So this is meant for all, irrespective of your basic. So whenever you get a promotion, you are fixed into a new pay band, and accordingly things are done. So the thing is, so this is an important point to note. So I'll try to derive, I mean, how the concepts that we just now explained, the use of static, the constant, and all this can be applicable to while we implement the salary class, okay, or a salary object. So now, can you tell me what will be the components of a salary class that you need to store? Tell me quickly.
Basic, DA, and bonus.
Basic, DA, and bonus. What are the types? Tell me quickly. Basic.
Integer.
Basic maybe integer, or maybe let us make it float, because when you go for those hikes yearly, you may, this may be some fractional value. Let us make it float. It may be long int also. Okay, so what about do we make it static or constant? Basic?
No, sir.
No. DA again it should be float, because it may be
Constant.
3.5% hike or 2 points, so it is a float. But do we make it constant or static? Constant or static?
Sir, static.
Static.
So this we make it as static because of this point. This is same for all designations. So we really do not have to store each object, or each employee do not need to store in its salary object, do not need to store the separately the DA value, because it can be stored in a common area in the heap, I mean, sorry, the data segment, right? But the bonus, and the bonus, typically you can think that this bonus component will be more or less a fixed value. I mean, just to make it, but it might also change. It's a fixed value. But in our case, for simplistic model, we say that the bonus will be applicable to all of the employees, no matter what designation he holds. But in practice, bonuses are not applicable for festival bonuses are not given to the managerial post or officer grade employees. Okay, so this bonus can be considered to be, so this may be considered to be integer because bonus is either 2000 or 5000 or something like that. So it's integer, and what will be the type of it? Because it is fixed value, we can make it as constant. Okay. Is that fine?
Yes, sir.
So now what can be the methods? Okay, before I do that, so what do you think? uh, okay, let me tell about the so one, there will be a constructor, one there will be a destructor, and what else we'll have? Now this DA should be hiked maybe once or twice in a year. So who will take care of the DA hike? Which function, which method should take care of the DA hike? So this DA hike is a procedure. So what kind of procedure it should be? A normal method or a static method or a constant method?
Static.
Because it should be dealing with, this DA hike should be dealing with only updating this DA component, right? Hello. So this DA hike method should be dealing with the this static float, this DA, this variable, this data, right? So this should be labeled as static. What about the, so calculate salary? Calculate salary is a normal method, right? So it will be just doing this computation. What about the display? We can tag it as constant, right? Is that fine?
Yes, sir.
Now, so these are fine. So which among these will be tagged as private or public? Hmm? Do you want your basic to be known to others?
No, sir.
Probably not. Okay, so we can tag this as we can tag this as private. This DA, we want to make it public or private? DA. So the news of the DA comes in the newspapers, right? So do you want to make it private?
DA is common to everyone, so we can
Yes,
make it public.
it is not only common, but it is also, it is published every time in the newspaper that there's some hike, so everybody knows what the DA is, right? So there is no secrecy in this. So if you make it public, doesn't really harm. Okay, but again, there is a accidental damage can be there, but let us make it public because everybody knows it. That is the reason why I make it public. And this bonus also, sometimes you can make it as public because these are also more or less known because it's same for all. But something uh, that is private for you, you can make it that is secret for a particular employee can be made. So one thing that we should have, I think, is the gross, because gross, which will compute the entire component, the entire salary. So this should be again a normal one, but this should be made as private. Is that fine? Is gross salary. Okay, before I get into the implementation part, now can you interpret the meaning of a constant salary object? So something, if I like sal, say S1, and if I write sal S2 const, can you interpret can you give the interpretation of this constant salary object in a realistic uh, in a in terms of the real life scenario, whose salaries are constant? Like once you join, whatever salary has been agreed, that will not be changed, that remains the same no matter what, there is a hike or there is a bonus or whatever. And in fact, even if you work for say 2-3 years, there is no change in your basic, or there is no basic component at all. It's just a pre-agreed uh, amount that is given to you. Do you know about these employees, such employees? Got this? They are purely on contractual basis. So contractual employees are, so in fact in our institute also we have got contractual employees who are who are anyway working in a government organization, but they do not enjoy the benefits of increments, DA hikes, bonuses and all the other factors. So they are purely contractual. So generally, so contractual posts are not created by the government, and college from its own revenue, like the students say whatever the semester fees and all this, so they create some posts because for smooth functioning, but because of the financial constants it is pre-agreed. So they need to be, so once you create, you just say that okay, I create it with some value of say 20,000, but the 20,000 never changes, and you have an agreement of that. Is that part okay? So in
Yes,
this
sir.
particular example, we have got all sorts of concepts that we have learned, and let us see how it works. So can you see the entire code? Is visible?
Yes, sir.
So now you see, so I have not mentioned anything here. That means I am making it as private. So these two are private, gross and basic. These three are public. Okay. In fact, there is a dummy, say reference variable, just to show that how the reference can be initialized. That's all. There is no reason for adding it. Apart from that, D and bonus is there, static and constant. Then I come to the constructor, the destructor, then the normal salary calculation method, then the DA hike, which is a static one, and the constant method, which is a display. Is that part okay?
Yes, sir.
So the interface is clear, and we make all of these public. Because we have made mainly these two components as private, and you cannot make any changes to them other than without calling these functions. Okay, so this salary component, you see, the constructor is like this. So B is 10,000, that is the default. So the default means what you can interpret, even if you go for a contractual employee, you can always have settle for a lower value. Okay, so like 5,000, but we expect that at least 10,000 should be given to a person, even he goes for a contractual basis, for no matter what kind of service he offers, right? So that's why I have set it to 10,000. But if you know that this is the designation of that particular employee, you have to set the basic value. So the basic value depends, as I mentioned, on the designation, and within a certain pay band, lower range to the higher range, it will be, so when you get the promotion based on your ability and all this, the employer fixes your pay to a particular value, and that you have to pass here. And then the bonus is always 2,000, so that's why this bonus is a constant. We have initialized it here. The dummy is just to how to initialize, we have shown it. So it's a constructor called, and then gross and basic both are set to B, because initially so it's basic and gross. Why I do this? For constant employees, beyond construction nothing happens, right? So you have to set the gross and basic both to B, and there is no DA component, anything. So gross never gets modified beyond this value. Is that part fine? Do you all agree with this?
Yes, sir.
So this destructor is just a dummy output that comes out, that destructor salary object destroyed, salary object constructed, and then this is the calculate salary, which actually uses that formula. So gross plus equals to bonus plus basic this. So it's the same formula that we have just now mentioned here. It implements this one. Okay. And then this float DA high, So this basically increments the DA plus equal to D. So this time it is a 3% hike that is about to happen. So that will be implemented probably in the March, and the existing DA is 28%. So now DA hike, it is a static method where we have specified the static keyword here during the prototype declaration. Do I need to mention it here?
No, sir.
If you make it, then it will be a there will be error message. Oof. Okay, and then the constant function, the display function, and we have made some customized uh, display so that things are clear. And then what is the first thing now before I attempt to create any object? What is the first thing? I have to declare and initialize the static member data. Can you recall?
Yes, sir.
So that we have done, and there is no mention of the static keyword here. Okay, so it is only mentioned here itself. So you write here cell float. You have to write the scope resolution, otherwise the DA may be a part of some other class also, so you have to specify that. And this is 4. In fact, it was 2 years back, so now it should be initialized to 28, the value 28% DA. Okay, and then what I've defined, this is a global object. Global object means, so maybe the CEO or maybe the director who is not a part of a particular department, so something like this. So I've just created a global object, CEO. Maybe you can make it a global static also, does not matter. No matter what happens, it stays the lifetime of the CEO is forever is there, and 1 lakh maybe the basic, something like this. And then this is salary S1 per means it's a permanent employee. The first permanent employee, this is the second permanent employee, this is also the permanent employee. And the first permanent employee, what is its basic? What is the basic value? It will take the default. What is that?
10,000.
10,000. But the second permanent employee, he has got a basic of 50,000. Okay, and then this is what? This is a temporary or contractual employee. So who is tagged as constant? You see. So the salary of this particular temporary staff, the salary component will never change no matter how long he or she gives service. Okay, and in this case we have considered the default value, so that also will be 10,000. And there are in fact a large number of staffs who are purely in a temporary basis they are working, so they are serving the office, they are serving the administration and all this, because government is not approving new posts. Because when you are creating your own post, you have to use the revenue that you have earned. If the government sanctions it, then the government will take care of their salaries. Okay, so the temporary stuffs are like this. So then I have this called the display function, the constant methods, to display the initial state of permanent and the temporary employee. Then there is a hike that I have called 3% hike. Okay, then after the hike I am displaying the content, so hopefully I'll have a change in that. So like this. So this is a very trivial code, so let us see that how it works if I run it. Okay, so this is the code. So everything remains same we have discussed. Okay, so here what I have done, I have stated which employee. So employee 2, permanent employee 2, I am displaying the salary, then DA hike, and then I am writing calculate salary for all the 3 uh, permanent employees, the CEO, the permanent employee 1 and 2. So after that I am displaying the salary of the second permanent employee, because it has been created within the scope, and once it comes out, I would expect a destructor to be called for corresponding to. So when the control comes out of this line 67, what happens? How many destructors are called?
Two.
Two
Three.
destructors. One is this S2
No,
permanent,
two.
second permanent employee, and the temporary employee. These two destructors will be called. And then again, when you are outside the inner loop, inner block, then you have got to display the first permanent employee's salary details and the CO salary details. And after that, both will be destroyed. So that is a. So we have. Okay, so I think you can see this. So first of all, the CO, so this corresponds to the static object probably. This corresponds to the permanent employee 1. This corresponds to the permanent employee 2. This corresponds to the temporary employee. And then I have displayed the permanent employee 2's salary details. Before it has been there was a hike, so DA is 28% because I have set it to 28%. The initial DA at present is 28% in reality also. So then, so the total gross is 50,000. Then the permanent employee 2 after the salary hike. So after the salary hike, you can see that the so the DA part has been increased and there is a hike in the salary, the gross salary. And then the control comes out. So both the inner objects got destroyed, and then the permanent employee 1 after the salary hike, because we have already calculated the hike inside the inner block. So there is a hike here and the new salary is getting displayed. Okay, so this salary permanent employee 1 got created with the default basic value of 10,000, but the DA gets incremented, and the CO with that 1 lakh. So maybe this is the salary that he enjoys, and then finally both will get destroyed. Okay, so is there any query till this point? Any question? So I think I have been able to I have shown you how to use these features in an effective way. So one use of the static was to count the number of objects that is currently I mean number of instances of a class. That is one thing. This is another way. This is another real example where we need to use a feature of static or constant or this. So at least one suggestion you can take, that no matter what happens, the display functions from now on should be tagged as constant. That you can try. Okay, so if I still try to update something in the display function, let's see what happens. So what I can try here is to write basic plus plus. Let's see what happens. So it is not allowed, but maybe sometimes it shows that there is a warning message, but this is not allowed completely. This is not allowed. So you cannot do this because this is a constant method, read only object, because this pointer is treating that to be a read only object. Okay, anything else? Any other question? Okay, I'll take them in the next class. I'll start that friend function. So that is the one that is left before I can start the operator overloading. Any question till this point?
Sir, will you take classes for graph?
Yes, I'll take that, but I have to complete this part also. I'll take that graph. Those who can submit, you can submit. Otherwise, because that is not, so that was part of the previous semester. So I would like to give some idea on how to store graphs, what is the data structure and all this. So maybe 2 hour lectures will be enough for the graphs. One thing I can do in the Monday's sessional, I can talk about the graph implementation. That is possible. And once we have done with the hashing and the graphs, there can be some real life problems. Real life means something meaningful that can be done using this hashing and graphs, that I can give you during that holy time when there will be no classes. Some more time will be given to solve those problems. Anything else? Okay, so thank you. I am leaving.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, sir.